Welcome in, everyone. Welcome in. What do futures look like right now? We're slightly red. What's going on, Daniel? What a great day. Well, it's been better than the past, 4 days, I should say. Wait for a few more people to trickle in and we'll get started real quick. See something. What's going on, Gaston? Wait, Gaston, you're bearish? Are you serious right now? Weren't you just bullish the other day? I thought you were really bullish the other day. I thought that was like literally just yesterday. All right, so looks like everyone's a little busy. I know that football's on also, so I'll get started real quick. We'll get it going. I'll run through it real quick. Won't be long. I'm not gonna pretty much bore everyone to death. And I'll give a quick update as you see I have the cues up on the chart here real quick. But going on, what's going on, everyone else? Boss Diego, what's going on? What's going on? So real quick off the cues, I just want to give a quick update on what I personally saw here today was that we actually bounced at a key level. If you saw, we had that perfect little trendline support dating back to March of last year. We had that nice little trendline. We ended up wicking below it. But that huge bounce that we ended up getting today was just major. We saw the body of the candle close right above that trend line. So that was definitely a plus. I do expect a little bit of continuation to the upside. So that's what I would expect. I'm not saying that we're going to go completely north here, but I do expect a little bit of an upside, a little bit of a continuation into tomorrow morning. Probably give some bulls a little bit of hope. Now, you would anticipate that it's going to continue the entire day, but now that's going to depend upon Jay Powell and an onslaught of other people that's going to be talking tomorrow. So we'll see what ends up happening coming out of Jay Powell. He actually does talk around 10 a.m. Eastern, if I'm not mistaken, and that's really going to be the key going into tomorrow here. So probably a small little gap up despite how futures pretty much look right now. And then that'll be the determining factor when Jay Powell pretty much opens his mouth and if he's hawkish or not, and that's going to be pretty bad for the market. So that's what we'll be looking at. Now, overall, what I am eyeing here is, and I actually thought this was 200. Let me actually just change it real quick. What I'm looking at real quick and very simply is I'm looking at one, the 200-day moving average, as you see how close we are to it from where the lows were today. And then also looking at the October lows as well. So those are the two levels that I'm pretty much just watching right now. We'll likely get a nice little bounce once we reach that 200-day moving average. And then also my overall target here will be towards the lows of October. And that'll be where we want to see if we end up holding on the Qs eventually here. So that's the two things that I am watching upon the reversal on this short-lived bounce that we're seeing off of today and going into tomorrow morning. That's what I'll be watching. Now, as far as how high we can go on the Qs, I'm pretty much watching a move. We can bounce as high as 386, but to me it all depends upon what Jay Powell is really going to say. And what actually concerns me about getting that much of a bounce is also the other events we have going on during the week. So we have pretty much an onslaught of people that's going to continue to be talking all week. And that's what's my concern here is if this bounce is really going to be able to continue based on the things that are going to be said or maybe be commented on throughout the week. But as far as how high we can go, 386 would be my target here if we're going to continue to get a nice little bounce off of today's price action. But other than that, we're watching tomorrow morning. Let's see what J Powell does, and then that bounce may even be more short-lived than what we anticipate. So that's what we'll be watching for. And then, of course, once we start to break the low of this body of this candle here that we have formed today, which will put you right around 374.85, then we know that it's likely going to be more of a free fall towards that 200-day moving average. All right. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on tomorrow, and we'll see exactly what Jay Powell does. Now, my advice tonight is not to necessarily put a trade through tomorrow morning at the opening bell. Wait to see what Jay Powell is pretty much going to open his mouth and what garbage is really going to come out of his mouth to either make this pump or make it dump. That's really what you're going to be waiting for, because if you end up getting into a trade before he talks, you're likely going to end up regretting it. All right. So that's what I will say. Just wait for it. If you're in an overnight position, then you're likely going to want to be monitoring that right around that 10 o'clock a.m. time frame, and just make sure that you are able to get out if you're on the opposite end. All right. But let's go through the alerts real quick. I'm going to run through them because there's quite a bit that I went through today, and I'm not going to bore you guys to death here just looking at them. But so I can get through them pretty quickly here, let me just get this off the screen. Perfect. All right. So first one that I learned today, and this is off the newsletter here today that we had, was Tesla. We had those Tesla rapids come out pretty early. I know that Tom literally came right on live and he called it out. He was already in those Tesla puts. Now they were a little bit short-lived from the time that he actually entered, but you had an opportunity to get on those rapids, set a limit order like I usually always pretty much preach, and then you got your opportunity to get your quick 10% right off that main 5 minute candle. That was just a beautiful move. They got in at 986, and you got a low of 982. So about close enough to about a $4 move to the downside. And if you got in and you lowballed, you probably got in about another $2 or $3 higher than what you should have. All right. And then you also had towards the end of the day, and this is where I would lean towards like a gap up, like I was saying, is the Tesla level fours that came out. So I am watching that. I also did see that Tesla's up after hours. I think it was about $12 or so after hours when we closed. So we'll be watching to see if there's any continuation on that after hours action. If we get a continuation of the gap up. Now, me personally, I do want to end up getting a nice little short on this. I do want to see what the strength is come tomorrow morning. So I'm pretty sure that me and Avery will likely be right on top of that on potentially shorting Tesla once it starts approaching this 1100 mark. So definitely keep an eye on that. Be on live tomorrow morning to hear me and Avery pretty much probably call that out on live. I know that he literally called the bottom today. If you heard him call the bottom right around 900 and something mark, he called it literally on the dot. And it was literally a rip straight north from there. So keep an eye on that for tomorrow morning. We'll see what it does. Next one was Uber. This one I actually scratched my head when I saw this Uber alert came out today, and it was basically an unusual because I was not expecting this one out of all the alerts. But they did snipe a little bit, I would say, at the bottom here. You see the orange line where they got in, and you literally got a beautiful move out of that. Right around that 40, 49, you hit a beautiful high, and I would say towards the end here, 42.81. So about a $2 and change move that you got out of that. Nice little quick scalper for the day, and you would have had a beautiful opportunity out of that. Next one was Shop, and I was actually calling about Shop to go higher. Just because of the fact that how oversold it is, we know that once the stock usually hits a technical support level, that it ends up bouncing pretty hard. And that was actually what we saw with Moderna today. We saw that about $19 to $20 ripper today out of Moderna. It's because they hit a technical support level, and it literally just had insane buyers just step in, and we saw the nice rally behind the headline that we also had today. So that's the same thing that I was expecting with Shop. Before this alert really came out, I had already been watching it, but once I saw it come through in this morning, it was a little bit early that they ended up getting it. But as you see, it ended up closing right in the middle of the gap fill from today's action. So we'll be watching the price action here over this 1143. We'll see a nice little rip, and we'll continue to see a nice price action here towards their target of 1100. Well, actually, the 1100 is already in the money. Take that back. But I would actually had a different target. If you want to see my targets on Shop, it's actually on my Twitter, and my chart actually got deleted. So if you guys actually want to see my targets on Shop, go ahead and take a look at my Twitter. I know that I put two targets on there, so keep an eye on that. But if I'm not mistaken, my overall target on Shop was 1190 if the bounce continues. That was my second PT on that. That's what I remember off the top of my head. All right. Google was another one. This one was a sleeper. I know that Avery actually pointed out to me that this literally was a sleeper. It made almost about $100 move in the day. We had early in the morning, we had those unusuals that came out. But at the time the unusual came out and we saw the market pretty much just nosediving, I don't think anyone paid attention to that at all. And then we also followed up right after lunchtime with a Nimbus. So that was just a beautiful ripper. You see where they got in with the line right here. This was the first one that came out with the unusuals. That was a time when no one wanted to look at it pretty much. And then we had that one right around lunchtime where they pretty much caught the middle of the run. It looks like they were trying to get in right upon the completion of the gap fill. They got a nice little entry and they had a nice little scalp right there, which gave them looks way more than 40% here off of this little rip. So that was a nice one. Definitely have to keep an eye on Google, especially when it's trending with the market. Google usually ends up to be a nice ripper because if I remember, we had about 4 or 5 unusual calls with Google in the past few days, but it was actually against the market trend. So now that this one actually followed the market trend, as we saw the big recovery, that's when you want to pay attention to those kind of names. So that's when you probably would have looked back and said, all right, is that was that did that unusual this morning, and what the current price was. So if you saw the market start to reverse here, probably you would have looked back at Google and you'd been like, oh, but this is down right now. And you also saw how much premium they put. That was not a small amount of premium. They dropped 235K on this one. So definitely something to just keep in mind. It follows the market trend. Usually ends up paying once they hit this with Google. If it's the opposite end of the market trend, then you usually want to end up trying to stay away. All right. Other one was five. This one was also another head scratcher. I did not see where they were going with this one, but it was Rapids. They literally bought the bottom. I mean, you had a small opportunity, I guess, if you wanted to say. The low was about 166, 167, and they bought 169. So about a $2 move. I wasn't too convinced about this one. And the reason why is because you don't have all my criteria basically. And one is the fact that they went pretty deep in the money, 182.50s, and the current price was 169. Right there, that was a head scratcher. And I usually don't like to end up playing in the money uh, alerts. So that's pretty much the first thing that alerted. And then I also saw the premium and I was like, it's not worth the gamble. All right. So that did not hit my criteria. As you see, I wouldn't tell you to get in something if it didn't hit my own criteria. So I'm not going to tell you to get into that. The other one was Amazon. Pretty much same scenario with Google. We saw the nice little V-shaped recovery. It actually did hit pretty much all the criteria that I like. You had out of the money strike, same week expiration, 100K minimum, and as a bonus you had a 60 plus K percentage. So that was a banger right there that ended up paying out. Other one was GME, and I know that we also had something also on Apple. But the GME one, it looks like it was a failure. If you see the orange line right here, if I zoom in actually, they literally bought the bottom with that put, and it probably literally hit a stop loss for them and they got out because you just saw that slow grind right back up. So that was a failure today. The Apple one, this was a nice grinder. We saw those rapids come out pretty much pretty early. And if you always remember, I usually say with the rapids is that if it follows the market trend, it's usually gonna be end up being a winner. They sniped a little bit of the bottom. We saw that nice continuation. We ended up hitting a high of 170, so you about got about $1.30 out of this, more or less. And then once it ended up hitting that nice little double bottom action, we saw the rip. It literally just went north. So that's why I usually say when you get an alert that usually follows the market trend, and you pretty much saw the market making a full recovery, you wanted to look back at this later on in the day, in which you looked back at it around lunchtime, and you would have noticed that this was pretty much breaking the high, and it was making pretty much once it crossed back over that 170 mark. That's when you really want to pay attention to it. If you look back at it during the day, so that's just something to keep in the back of your mind when alerts usually trigger and it follows the market trend. Tend to try and look back at them later on in the day. All right, that's just pretty much an advice there. Other thing was Roku. Roku, I'm not usually a big fan of Roku. I think, did I even look at this on a smaller scale? Did I even? No, I don't think I looked at. Yeah, I looked at it on a larger scale. Looks like Roku. This was a put. This one did not pay today, as you see it pretty much close green. Reason I was actually pulling it out on a larger scale is because I would anticipate that they're looking for Roku to pretty much make a bigger move. They hit the 170 puts. It is out of the money. It does hit a premium of 100K plus, and it is same week expiration. So what I'm particularly looking at is pretty much a similar situation to what I'm looking at with Moderna, as you have that defined downtrend, but you're looking for the prior resistance from when you initially broke out early in 2021, and you could fall back towards 2020, and that looks like it's right around that 169.14 level. So I understand why they ended up hitting that strike, and they're looking to end up actually getting to that mark towards the at least by the end of this week, because it is the same week expiration. But we're going back basically to what was prior resistance is what the key importance is here. So that's why I want to zoom out and give you that quick update on that. So we'll look for a continuation on that one. Keep it on your radar and your watch list tomorrow, and we'll see how this one ends up playing out today, tomorrow. Let me look also. This one was in the video real quick. I know that this one ended up paying out. We saw that nice little grind up. Same thing with also with AMD, which do I have an AMD alert? No, actually, we had the Super Fortuna beta go off, And that's when I was like, when I actually saw Nvidia go off early in the morning, and then I heard Super Fortuna Beta go off with AMD. They pretty much usually coincide. The only thing about this alert was that if you see the orange line, as I try to zoom in as best as possible here, they pretty much bought near the top of the first little reversal before it ended up coming back down. So you may have had to average down or likely hit your stop loss. And then before it ended up making that nice push right into the close. But overall, this was a nice and beautiful trade. They did go out of the money, and that trade actually went in the money by the close. They hit 100K in premium and same week expiration plus the 60% in TFC score. So that pretty much hit all my criteria. This was a beautiful trade. I was watching the video on this one as well. And once I saw the AMD, I pretty much knew that they were both going to run side by side. All right. Other one was a firm. I know that we had the whale alert. That's pretty much what I'm bringing up exactly right now. I know that at one point in the morning, Tatum actually said he was up about 22% on his. I was up about 18% on mine, 18, 17, 18%. And I actually am still holding a few runners on it because I wanted to lock in profits, especially with this market volatility. And so, and they made a nice push into the end of the day. I was like, wow, I should have held. But I just wanted to make sure I secure profits because during this kind of market environment, you definitely don't want to be caught holding a position, especially for the upside when the market's really just still in a defined downtrend on a larger scale. All right. But this is a beautiful one. We'll look to see if there's a day trade opportunity again tomorrow. And if the market is in favor of it, I will definitely be there for the day trade. All right. Other one was BlackRock. I know that BlackRock, Tom actually pointed out they have earnings. Just wanted to bring it up to your attention. We saw this one basically with an unusual put. They did go out of the money. They gave themselves quite a bit of time though, about just about a month or so in expiration, and it's 100K plus in premium. So just keep it on the radar. Those of you that like to gamble per se, keep this one on your radar. Might end up paying out pretty nicely for you. All right. And then the two last ones here, real quick. SE, this was just pretty much a V-shaped recovery. I pretty much overlooked this one. I was stepped away at the time that the alert came out. I literally stepped away from my desk and I didn't look back at this alert. But this was just a beautiful V-shaped recovery intraday here, and it literally just ripped. Those calls actually went beautifully right in the money. So they did hit initially out of the money calls. The only thing I would have been a little bit cautious about, they gave themselves more than 1 week of expiration. And then, but what was the caveat here is the amount of premium that they put into this one. They dropped 294K in premium on SE, in which we know this has been really a ticker that's just been dying endlessly. So who in their right mind would drop 294K on this name that's just been dying continuously? So that was one that I probably would have looked at. I probably would have did quite a bit of TA on it to see what they were looking at. But none the fact, it actually filled the gap. Beautiful V-shaped recovery. Hopefully some of you actually caught that. And then the last one here was just Facebook. This was just a beautiful one. I knew that Facebook was also going to get a nice move. I was targeting about 330, close enough to 333 as my second PT. And this one, I will look to see a continuation out of it tomorrow. Probably get this continuation into the gap fill to complete it. And then we'll see if there's any further upside. Granted, if the Qs do want to continue to run, that'll give me a better picture of what the more upside is here on Facebook. So definitely Facebook will be on my radar tomorrow. Affirm is on my radar as well. And Nvidia for continuation. So those are the three that I'm primarily watching alongside, of course, with Tesla, which is usually always on the watch list. But I think those are the names that I'm more key in on is Facebook, Nvidia, and Affirm, following the whale alert. So I'll keep an eye on those three names along with Tesla tomorrow. So that's pretty much what I'm building my watch list around, and we'll see what they end up doing. I know that Tom is actually in Goldman Sachs. I don't think I necessarily charted Goldman Sachs per se. I don't know what this chart is there for, but just looking at it on a daily perspective, I mean it's pretty much what I see with JPM. But, and I actually thought I had this charted out. I guess I don't. But if I pretty much look at it, you're basically looking at a little bit of an expanding wedge. So it all depends also tomorrow how hawkish Jerome Powell is, because that's really going to favor the banks. So that's what we'll be watching for tomorrow is Jay Powell as it relates to the banks. That's what you're really going to be keying on. But as you see, you have a little bit of a defined resistance level that you're going to be watching here in the coming days. I know the short-term target here that they were hitting on flow was 410. So we definitely want to see that end up hitting. But the key resistance here that we want to get over is 407. So 407.48 is the key level that I'm watching for resistance. If we can't get over that, then that's likely not going to hit that 410 target that a lot of the flow is pretty much hitting. The other one that I did have charted out though was JPM, which pretty much looks very similar in a sense. I know that Doug is also pretty much high on JPM. You also have a similar price action here, but the key break here is going to be over that 170 mark. As we saw it pretty much regress just a bit from the highs of today, we definitely want to see JPM over that 170 mark, and that'll be very key tomorrow as well. So those are the two banks primarily that I'm watching. I know also that Tatum's actually holding leaps on Bank of America, and we know if one of the banks are going to be up, they're likely all going to be up tomorrow. So we'll see what they do. Spy, I'm not necessarily looking too much into Spy. I know that I looked at the Qs for those of you that pretty much got in late. I'm watching the Qs here more so, is because we bounced right at the trendline support here. Off of breaking down from the wick, we made a nice little quick recovery, that V-shaped recovery that we had today, and I'm looking for a short-term bounce. Potential upside target is 386 at the highest, but then I would expect us to come right back down. And then we also do have the 200-day moving average, the likely reach down to the downside, where we'll get another technical bounce. And then ultimately, I'm looking at the October lows to reach, which would be the lows of 350.32 ultimately within the next few months here. So that's ultimately what I'm targeting. But tomorrow, it's all going to be based upon Jay Powell. We'll see what Jay Powell really says, what he's going to end up doing. Do I even have anything on my spy chart? Actually, I do. I didn't even notice that. I have not looked at my spy chart per se, but it actually looks like we actually did hit a little bit of resistance. If I look at my downtrend resistance here, which we pretty much came right into, yeah, we hit right into my downtrend resistance here. If you're looking at those wicks, so we'll likely end up tapping right into that 200-day moving average, which will likely put us around 467. So that'll be where we end up going into. We completed the gap fill today. We'll likely see if we can get right back over that 200-day moving average off of SPY here. And then we'll end up likely getting that rejection. That's where I would anticipate we get that reversal right back to the downside. So we'll keep an eye on that, but I'm more so interested in the Qs because that's really what's going to drag us. We know that the Dow stocks are really going to be, they can hold up, they can get their bounce back, but more so the picture is the Qs, and that's really what's going to carry the market as high as pretty much everyone wants it and the momentum. All right. Other than that, though, right now I would say that the market volatility is still elevated. This could be a very short-lived bounce, so do not try to enter anything until Jay Powell pretty much talks tomorrow, and then you'll see what the market trend is following his whatever words that he ends up saying, if he's hawkish or not, and then we'll be able to pretty much give you the play-by-play tomorrow during live. All right. Other than that, though, I'll conclude with that. We'll see what the market gives us tomorrow. We'll take what it gives us, for that matter, whether it's good or bad, and we'll be there to pretty much guide you guys as much best as we can. All right. Other than that, you guys have a good night. Go enjoy some football, and I will see you guys on live tomorrow morning. All right. Have a good one, guys.